You, yes, you, sitting there with that quiet storm behind your eyes, pretending everything is fine while the world thinks it understands you. They don't. Not even close. Because while you were minding your own path, someone out there thought it would be clever to tug at your patience, poke at your peace, and twist your emotions like a puppet on thin strings. They tried to make you jealous. They tried to lure you into a reaction. They wanted to watch you crumble, or at least twitch. But you didn't. And that's where the story begins. Picture this. Someone sets a trap, but the floorboard they rig snaps beneath their feet instead. That's what happens when people play games with shadows they can't measure. They underestimate the quiet ones, the disciplined ones, the ones who don't show every feeling the moment it rises. They expected you to rage, lose control, or rush to prove your worth. They thought you'd trip over the bait they dangled. Little displays, comparisons, boasts, or sudden disappearances designed to sting. But you didn't flinch. You didn't drop your standards. You stayed still. And in that stillness, something uncomfortable began to stretch inside them. Let me tell you something about people who try to provoke envy. They don't do it from strength. They do it from fear. Fear that you'll forget them. Fear that you've outgrown them. Fear that you walk with a clarity they can't imitate. They act loud because silence exposes them. No. They can't let that happen, so they perform. They exaggerate. They try to sparkle with a shine that doesn't belong to them. And the funniest part? The moment you refuse to play along, the mirror reflects right back on them. You see, the trap wasn't designed for your downfall. It was designed to mask their insecurity. Yet when you refuse to take the bait, their own intentions wrapped around them like wires tightening inch by inch. Suddenly, they start wondering, why isn't this working? Why aren't you reacting? Why does the silence feel so heavy? Because silence is powerful. It forces truth to surface. It leaves no room for performance. And there you were, calm, steady, focused. Not because you're emotionless, but because you've learned something crucial. People who try to provoke you reveal their weakness before they reveal your own. They show what they fear losing. They expose what they wish they had. They uncover the limits of their confidence. So while they tried to spark jealousy in you, they ended up triggering their own doubts. They fell into the hole they dug. Their plan, crafted with whispered intentions and little smirks, collapsed right under their shoes. And the more they tried to climb out, the deeper they sank. Because now they're trapped in a question they never expected to ask. Why didn't you react? That question eats at them. It keeps them awake longer than they admit. It makes them check your silence again and again, as if trying to decode something they were never prepared to understand. See, this story isn't about them. It's about you, about what happens when someone tries to shift your emotions but fails. What happens when you stay grounded while others stumble over their own intentions? What happens when your growth exposes their immaturity without you lifting a single finger? Some people expect you to crumble when they step away. Instead, you rose higher. Some think you'll panic when they show off. Instead, you smiled quietly. Some expect you to feel replaced. Instead, you understood your value doesn't shrink just because someone else tries to inflate theirs. And that burns them from the inside. Because deep down, they wanted control. Not over your choices, over your reactions. They wanted proof that they still mattered in your mind. They wanted reassurance through your discomfort. but you didn't give it. Your silence became sharper than any response. And now the tension has shifted. They started the game, but you ended it, simply by refusing to play. This script you're about to hear, it isn't about revenge. It isn't about bitterness. It isn't about competing with anyone. It's about recognizing your strength, the kind that doesn't roar, the kind that doesn't collapse, the kind that doesn't chase validation. It's about the moment when you realize you don't need to match anyone's noise. Your presence is loud enough without a single word. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought your calm was confused. They believed that if they moved a few pieces on the board, you would stumble right into their narrative. But instead, you stepped back and watched the whole stage expose itself. Because when someone tries to trigger jealousy, they reveal their intentions faster than they expect. Their actions become louder than their words. Their motives leak out through every exaggerated gesture, every forced laugh, every sudden display of "look at me." And as they push harder, their confidence thins like paper. The moment you choose not to react, the balance flips. They wanted you to chase. They wanted you to question yourself. They wanted you to watch them, compare yourself, maybe even panic a little. But what they didn't prepare for was the weight of their own performance, pressing back on them. No, no, no. You see, when someone tries to provoke your emotions, they expose something they don't admit. They're thinking about you more than you ever were about them. They rehearse, invent, exaggerate, because they want a response, not a logical one, an emotional one. But when you give them silence instead of reaction, they're left staring at their own reflection, wondering why the plan isn't working. That's when the discomfort begins to grow inside them. Not the kind you see, the kind that sits quietly behind their actions. They start checking their own choices. They question their own worth. They analyze your silence like it's a code they can crack. But your silence isn't a puzzle. It's a statement. You're not here to play their games. And that scares them more than any reaction you could have shown. Because your lack of response forces them to face something uncomfortable. Maybe they don't affect you the way they thought. Maybe their attempt to spark jealousy didn't create insecurity, it exposed their own. Maybe you outgrew the version of yourself they believed they could manipulate. That's when their confidence becomes fragile. Their tricks lose power. Their displays start looking strange even to themselves. They expected you to fall apart. Instead, they're the ones picking up the pieces of their failed plot. What they didn't expect was your growth. Quiet growth. The kind that doesn't need applause. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that turns bait into dust. And when someone tries to provoke a person who is grounded, focused, and self-aware, their attempts fall flat right before their eyes. They tried to pull you into a game of reactions, but you stayed in a game of reflection. You stayed steady. And steadiness is something many people can't replicate. They can mimic confidence. They can mimic joy. They can mimic control. But steadiness? That can't be faked for long. No, no, no. So here's the truth. They discovered the hard way. Your silence was never emptiness. It was discipline. It was clarity. It was strength wrapped in patience. And while they were busy staging scenes to trigger you, you were busy understanding something deeper. Your worth isn't affected by someone else's display. Some people believe jealousy gives them power. They think controlling someone's emotions means controlling the whole situation. But when their attempts backfire, they face their biggest fear. They never had any power over you to begin with. That's why the trap closed on them. Not because you pushed it, not because you wanted revenge, simply because their intentions carried consequences they didn't consider. When you build a trap out of insecurity, you eventually trip over your own doubt. And now the story shifts. Now they feel the silence. Now they feel the absence of a reaction. Now they see the strength you held all along. And that strength unsettles them more than any words you could have spoken. Because strength without noise is rare. Strength without show is unsettling. Strength without revenge is confusing. People don't know how to respond when you rise without stepping on anyone. They can't interpret it. They can't categorize it. They can't fight something they can't predict. And that's why they fell into their own trap. Their attempt to provoke you revealed your discipline. Their desire to shake you revealed your stability. Their noisy performance revealed your quiet confidence. And now they're left facing the truth. They underestimated the very person they tried to control. There comes a moment when the show ends. The lights fade, the performance collapses under its own weight, and the person who tried to spark jealousy in you suddenly finds themselves standing alone in the quiet, confronted by a truth they never expected to face. Because once their plan fails, reality becomes painfully clear they never had the influence they believed they had. Their attempts to provoke you didn't stir your emotions, they exposed theirs. They're left replaying every move, every gesture, every calculated moment, wondering where the control slipped from their fingers. They start to realize that your silence wasn't an absence, it was presence. A stronger presence than anything they displayed. You didn't shout, you didn't chase, you didn't break. You simply held your position, and that stillness forced them to see themselves without the illusion they were trying to maintain. And now the discomfort grows. Not because of anything you did, but because of everything they did to themselves. They see that their actions looked exaggerated, their efforts looked forced, their performance didn't shine. It cracked. And the person they wanted to impress, unsettle, or provoke didn't move. But here's the shift they weren't ready for. Once the trap snaps shut, the silence isn't painful for you. It's painful for them. They feel it every time they check your reaction and see nothing but calm. They feel it every time they realize they misread your strength. They feel it every time they understand your value isn't something they can shake. That's when reflection hits them harder than any response you could have given. They begin to see the contrast. Your maturity against their display, your stability against their attempt, your growth against their game. They see the difference so clearly it almost stings. And then something surprising happens. The same person who tried to provoke envy starts to feel something else entirely. Accountability. Not forced. Natural. They start asking themselves why they acted the way they did. Why they sought attention so desperately. Why your calm stirred something in them they don't want to admit. Because when someone tries to manipulate your emotions and fails, they're left facing their own. And that's the lesson they didn't expect to learn. You didn't teach it through anger. You taught it through composure. A lesson delivered without a single raised voice. No. They begin to see the imbalance. How much energy they invested trying to control your reaction, how little you invested thinking about theirs. How grounded you were, and how unsteady they became. They tried to shake you, but they shook themselves. And now the quiet becomes something else. Clarity. For you, it's clarity of self. For them, it's clarity of mistake. Because you're no longer standing in the frame they built for you. You've stepped out of it. You've grown beyond it. And they're left staring at the empty space where they expected you to crumble. This is the part they never prepared for. The moment they see that your strength wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, wasn't reactive. It was disciplined. And discipline is something they weren't ready to meet, something they couldn't imitate, something that reflected their intentions right back at them. And now they feel something they didn't expect. Respect, not admiration. Respect. A recognition that you didn't retaliate, didn't drop your values, didn't lower yourself to meet their game. You stood firm. You walked forward. And you let the truth reveal itself. Because the real victory wasn't in proving anything to them. It was in proving something to yourself. That you're not defined by tricks. That your emotions belong to you, not to anyone's performance. That your worth doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's insecurity. No, no, no. And while they wrestle with the consequences of their own attempt, you rise with something they can't deny anymore. Growth. Quiet growth. Steady growth. The kind that closes old chapters without bitterness and opens new ones with clarity. There comes a point when you stop looking back, not because you're avoiding anything, but because the road ahead finally deserves your full attention. You've seen the games, the attempts, the failed tricks, and now your next step isn't about them. It's about protecting the calm you earned. Moving forward doesn't require a speech. It doesn't require announcing anything. Growth isn't something you display. It's something you live. And that's exactly where your power rises, quietly, steadily, with direction, not distraction. You don't chase shadows anymore. You walk with purpose. You learn something important from their attempt. Not everyone around you is rooting for your clarity. Some want to shake it, bend it, test it. But you also learn that their attempts only work when you let them. And you didn't. You stayed rooted. You stayed aware. No, no, no. You didn't let anyone pull you off your path. Now your focus shifts. Not on who misread you. Not on who tried to provoke you. But on what you're building next. Your future doesn't have room for distractions disguised as challenges. You've grown too precise for that. You choose your battles now, and most aren't even worth a second glance. You protect your peace by reinforcing your boundaries. Quiet ones, strong ones, ones that tell people you can't be pushed, pulled, or dragged into anyone's insecurity. You've learned the difference between reacting and responding, and most of the time the correct response is silence. Silence with awareness, silence with intention, silence with strength. Moving forward means choosing environments that nourish you instead of draining you. It means stepping away from those who use provocation as a language, because you now understand something they don't. Your calm is not weakness. It's strategy. It's self-respect. It's maturity. And not everyone is prepared to meet you at that level. You keep your energy close now. You observe before you engage. You choose before you offer. You don't let anyone earn access simply because they demand attention. Your presence becomes something earned, not taken. And that shift alone rewrites the future you're stepping into. You move differently now. Not harder, not colder, just wiser. You understand that staying true to your path doesn't require reacting to every distraction along the way. You're not here to entertain anyone's attempt to shake you. You're here to focus on your goals, your growth, your next chapter. No, no, no. You're done wasting time on traps set by people who don't understand your value.